Trustees, Village of Lake Bluff, for August 25th, 2025. Clerk, please call the roll.
Member Fisher
Here.
and Chair Ryder. Here. Do you have a quorum?
Yes, here. Okay, first order of business is approval of the minutes from March. I knew it would have been a while since we'd been together. March 10th, 2025. Are there any questions regarding the minutes of that meeting?
No.
I had no questions either. So I have a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of the March 10th meeting of the Finance Committee.
Oh, so moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, non-agenda items and visitors. The Finance Committee allocates 15 minutes at this time for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the committee on any matter not listed on the agenda. It doesn't appear that we have anyone in the room. Drew, do we have anybody online?
If anybody's participating now that wants to be heard for items that are not on tonight's Finance Committee meeting agenda, please raise your hand. You'll be recognized at this time. No one.
Okay, on to the business discussion items. First, we have a presentation regarding the police pension for fiscal year 2025, and the actuaries are going to present the draft actuarial valuation.
I think we have both now.
Yeah, looks like it.
Bring it up.
Just in time.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, terrific. Thank you. And thank you very much for loading it. I apologize. I wasn't able to join in person tonight. I would have liked to. I had knee surgery just recently and I'm not certified to drive yet, but soon. So anyway, also on the line with me is Kyle Bang and Carol Ullman, both of whom worked on the reports, the OPEB report, the accounting report for pension, and the pension funding report. So I think if it's helpful, you just interrupt me whenever if you have any questions, and we'll try to go through it and answer whatever you've got.
Terrific.
All right. The first page, which is page 2, actually, is just a disclosure, and it basically says that this report is for the accounting financial purposes for the police pension plan and the Lake Bluff Finance Committee. Page 3 is just, the next page was just a summary of what we're going to go through, introduce the actuaries, I'll go through the pension funding valuation results, a little historical review. There's a sheet with some projections, the accounting results, and then talk about some of the actuarial assumptions and a few of the other considerations. I think I'm Kathy Manning. I've been working with the Lake Bluff team for a long time, gratefully. And Carl has worked with the Lake Bluff team for quite a long time, and Kyle has also, over the past few years, been involved in the pension area. So if we go to page 5, which let's see if we can.
Oh, she's got it.
Who's got it? No, I don't know.
Drew has it.
Drew, do you have the presentation?
Yeah, I just have it up because I'm looking.
Okay.
Is there? Yeah, there we go. We show this. It's just a description on a summary of the participant data, and it's a stable group, which is helpful, and helpful for stability for the funding amounts and also for projections and things like that. So
recording in progress.
We see we have one more active participant this year, And the total participants is then one more at 36. The other categories remain and the same as they were pretty much as last year. We have movement into the one less retiree, and the disabled counts have remained about the same, and that's a big portion of concern in terms of how the liabilities are allocated and whether the assumptions are predicting the correct distribution of benefits to the various participants. So I don't think there's, the tier one people are still are higher than the tier two people, and we'll see where that goes over the next, more active. There's 10 tier one actives and 5 tier two. Last year there were 6 tier one and 8 tier two. Sometimes these amounts can change. If you hire somebody who had tier one experience, dates of hire, and they might come in with a new date of hire, you reflect back and see that they're not really a tier two, they're a tier one. So some of those things happen in the accounting for the participants. I don't think there's any questions either on the participant counts.
I want to just make sure I understand. This is Susan Ryder. The 8 non-vested last year, and now the 5 vested or non-vested this year in the tier 2. You're saying that the people didn't necessarily change, but their status as tier 1 or tier 2 may have changed, such that some of those 8 became vested in tier 1. I guess I'm.
Oh, no,
not-
Kyle,
understand.
can you answer that?
I can answer, Kathleen. There were at least 2 lateral transfers that initially, when they were entered in the system, were not entered as tier 1 because the information wasn't provided. This year that was corrected, and
I
they
see.
are tier 1.
I see. So that's at least 2 of the changes. So,
Yes.
okay.
It happens sometimes that, as people are hired, their full history isn't reflected in the data. And so they're identified by their most recent hire date rather than their status from within the system as a tier 1 participant. So I think we don't have any more. We can move on to the next slide, 6.
Desperately trying to, stand by.
Well, thank you for doing that.
Well, you may want to hold on that.
Can't move it.
Well, the next slide is just talking about the funding policy. And the funding policy is important in terms of how the contributions are developed and the tax levy. And it was, and it's also figures into how the accounting is, how the expense and the liabilities are reflected in the GASB accounting valuation. So technically, there should be a written articulated policy reflecting the actuarial methodology to be used to determine the ADC and a commitment to fund accordingly. There's an understanding that as I understand it, Lake Bluff would like to fund on the entry age method to 85% or to 95% funded by 2040, and to do this on an unfunded amortization basis of level dollar amounts. And that's very good. It isn't written, it isn't actually, and because of that, the accounting firm Sikich has always believed that if it wasn't actually written, that they would review the funding policy for their purposes as being basically up through 2040, and if there's no written policy saying it extends beyond 2040, then they say, because the statutory provision is silent after 2040, that they don't extend the village's funding policy beyond that. It doesn't, in this case, make a lot of difference, but it's just something to note. But because of the funding policy method is a level dollar amount, the amortization each year exceeds the interest that is due on the unfunded accrued liability, and that's important. Oftentimes, if the method is one that adheres to the statutory level percentage of pay, the level percentage, or the percentage remains level, but the amount it's applied to changes because it's based on projected payroll, and payroll goes up. So at the beginning, the percentage, the dollar amount that results from a percentage applied to the beginning amount is going to produce a different dollar amount when that same percentage is applied to an amount 20 years later, which has been inflated with salary increases. So therefore, the funding on it is delayed because you're assuming there's going to be more funding later on than earlier. And it sets, your unfunded can increase actually because the interest on your unfunded goes up and the contributions that are made are not sufficient to cover it. So in this case, we have the level dollar amount, which is more, which does provide a contribution amount enough to cover the interest on the unfunded. We also produce in the report an amount that we call prevents negative funding. And that amount is like the amount to produce, avoid negative funding would be 1.1 million. The actual funding contribution, this is the employer amount, for the funding policy basis is 1.4. So that additional amount covers the remaining or additional interest on the unfunded that would otherwise not be there. So you can see that on the next policy or the next slide. The funding we showed the funding policy basis and the statutory basis. And the accrued liabilities are different. The funding policy is using the entry age. The statutory basis is using the projected unit credit basis. They're not dramatically different, but they are a little bit different. The assets, the valuation assets are smoothed for gains and losses over 5 years. And the market value is just a straight market value. And they're not too far apart, but they are a little apart. The funded ratio then, and this is on market value, shows that the funding policy basis is 57.9 and the statutory 57.5, which is an increase from last year, which is good. And you'll see from the other charts that it's been moving up from 50%, 54% or more from many years ago up. Now we're at 57, almost 58. The contribution this year, the employer contribution is 1.4 million. The member contribution is 176,000. So the total contribution is 1.6 million. And that's an increase from last year of 1.3 million. The benefit payments are they're more this year, 1.2 million, but not that much more than last year, which was just about 2 million. One of the attractive things about this is the liquidity ratio, which shows it's 244% for 2025, and that's the money in versus money out percentage. So there's more money coming in than there is coming out, as there was last year, but it's improved again this year. The investment results were very good. Mm-hmm. So if we move on to the next slide, shows funding results from 2017 forward. And there are a lot of numbers. I guess the thing that you're looking back in 2017, we're at 57%, and here we are at 2025, and we're at 57, 58%. A big part of that is there's been a lot of changes in the measurements and the liabilities, a lot of it from strengthening of the assumptions. The mortality tables have been strengthened significantly from 2017. Each year, really, actually. I think last year was the first year, 2024, where there weren't any changes to the mortality table. And this year, of course, there were not. the mortality table moved from an older table to we call it the PUBS, Public Safety Mortality Table, in 2022, and then that was further adjusted by some results of the pension board experience studies, which just adjusted the rates from the PUBS table for some experience ratios based on the Illinois police mortality experience. I think the funding policy in 2017, you can see it was 709,000, and now it's almost twice. The percentage is we're 54%, now we're up to 79% of payroll. There were a few, unfortunate years in investment returns, and then there were a few one or two that were okay, but it really bounced up, I'd say, in 2022, I think they moved up, and now we're back to, it was even in 2023 and 2024, and here we are in 2025, it's 1.4 million. I mean, it's one thing, another thing to keep in mind is that the costs of a pension plan go up because you have accruals that are increasing every year, salaries that affect it. So it's, and the contributions and the assets are on one side reducing the net effect, and then on the other side are the experiences and continued accruals on behalf of the actual plan participants. Do you have any questions on this? I think one thing I might want to mention is that when you have 58% funded ratio, it means you've covered, 58, almost 60% of the liabilities. Your assets cover about 60%. So when you look at returns, if you say, well, the assets or the liabilities are going to go up by 6.8%, well, that's 100% of the liabilities are going to go up by 6.8%. But the assets only cover 60%. So that means only 60% are going to go up by whatever the asset return is. Mm-hmm. So if it's 9.46% is your asset return, that's great. But that's only 60% of where we need to go. So that only covers about 5.5, 5.6% compared to the 6.8 that goes up on the total liability side. So as the fund ratio increases, the impact of the investment return also increases, and it's more dynamic as you go forward.
So to make sure that I understand what you're saying, our accrued liability is almost 26 million as of May 1st, but the market value of the assets is 15 million. So the return we earned of 9.46 is on that 15 million,
Right.
The money that's actually in the bank, rather than on the total liability. The closer we get to having fully funded that amount, the more we recognize returns, a greater portion of returns than we do now.
Yeah, the power of the investment returns increases as you get to a higher funding level, and decreases the demand on the contribution part from the employer. But it's not when, especially when people talk about, oh, we earned 10%, we earned 8%, it seems like that should take care of everything. And then you realize, well, we don't have everything covered yet, so that, if we're only at 40% or 50% or something like that, it doesn't do the whole job.
I have
Go ahead.
I have a question, Catherine. So you're saying that by 2040 we should be at 95% of basically today the 26 million liability. Today we're at at 16 maybe. And we are basically investing a total of $1.6 million today, but we're still at funding liability of 16. what would it take to fund liability projected in 2040 at 95%? How much more of that 1.6 should be invested? That's my question.
If you go to slide 17,
Crystal ball,
Yeah, look at page 14. She gives a
14.
of the actual
17.
of the valuation.
She said to look 12.
I'm sorry, I'm very impatient typically.
17.
There it is. This is a projection of the, it happens to be based on the accounting basis, not that far off, but it shows the contributions increasing through 2040. They go down and then they go up a little bit, but to finish it off at 1.4. And then after 2040, under the accounting theory that was for the purposes of 67, 68, it's assumed that the continued amortization will no longer apply. It'll just be and the service cost and interest that goes forward. You would expect, though, that you wouldn't drop it that far. At 2040, you would continue to fund under the funding policy, and so those amounts would be higher. But this is also what we call a closed group. The only people considered in this are the 36 or 39 people that are there now. In other words, the current active group and the retirees and deferred vesteds that have been counted in 2025. And each year, of course, some people are going to retire and they're going to drop out of the group, but they're not replaced. If you want to see what the projection of contributions would look like, we have to do what we call an open group projection. And in that case, the estimated or projected decrements of people out of the group are replaced with hypothetical portions of participants. You don't have, with a small group, you don't have whole people go, you have fractions of people go according to the assumptions. But I'm only mentioning that and this assumes that the interest rate stays at, the liability stays at 6.8 or wherever our accounting rate is at 6.5, and that the assets earn 6.8 through most of the period. Does that help?
It does. What you're saying is if we maintain a level of investment at basically a little bit less than $1.5 million per year, we'll meet the market. We'll meet the mark in 2040 for basically the necessary investment, and this is what we're doing today. That's what you're saying.
Yes, if there were no more people, if we don't add any more new employees, that's what it would be. According to this, and everybody, retired when the assumptions say they should retire and things like that, but that's kind of what it is.
Got it.
And
Thank you.
tier 2 stays the way it is.
Right.
Right.
Lots of ifs.
Yeah.
So,
15 years, it'll be here just like that.
I couldn't, when I was reading 15 years, I thought, oh, well, that's like 2050, isn't it? No, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2040 is 15 years.
time flies. Well, if we go back a little bit to page 9, these are just graphs of the funded status. I guess it's not that, it just confirms what we've seen with the other charts, and that the funded status has been hovering around between 50 and 60%. And that there hasn't been a big burst in unfunded or assets over this period from 2016. On the next slide, 10, are the funding policy contributions, and they're increasing in dollar amounts. And as a percentage of payroll, they are increasing too, compared to what they were in 2018. But it's under control, I think, but it's higher, I know, than people would like to see. Go to page 11, these are the accounting valuation results, and of course they affect the net liability that you're showing on your financial statements and the CAFR. The first row on here shows the discount rate that has been determined under GASB 68 and it requires to use the assumed rate, which has been different for most of these years than it is today, and then the muni rate, and it's a combination of those two. And the way it works is that you project all the benefit payments going forward based on the valuation of you have the people and you have the projected benefits according to the plan, and you project the benefit payments out according to the retirement assumptions and everything else, and then you discount those payments back. And you discount the payments back at the assumed asset return for as long as the assets are sufficient to cover the benefit payments. And once the assets are no longer there, then you're determining you're needing new contributions, and then you use the muni rate to discount those additional payments back. So in this case, we're talking about an assumed rate of 6.63%, just slightly under the assumed rate for 2025. In 2024, it was 6.59%, but the assumed return on assets for funding was 7%. And that was true all the way back. I believe that there was a significant discussion, Bettina would, I think, confirm it last year, on whether or not to adjust the assumed rate of return on funding from 7% down to what the police board had recommended, which was the 6.8%, or what they're using in their statutory determinations. The assets have grown from 9 million to 15 million. That's pretty significant. And the accrued liability from 17 to 26 million. The annual pension expense, determined under the accounting method, has gone from 857,000 to 1.1 million. Not quite as dramatic as some of the other numbers might have been. And your funded ratio on the accounting valuation has gone from 53% down to 48%, and then back up to 56%. The accounting valuations, of course, are affected, as the other valuations are, by the different interest rates, the actual assumed rate, and then the muni rate that might affect it, and the actual experience throughout the period. If you look at the muni rate, for instance, in 2021, it was 2.12%, which is pretty low. So the net pension liability was 8 million in 2017. Today it's 11.5 million. And it was, the highest it was in 2023 at 13 million. The next slide is the accounting expense and the net liability. I think the expense has maintained, fairly stable, under 2 million, generally between 1.1 and 1.4, something like that. And the net liability has creeped up, but not totally out of bounds. It's gone from 8 million to where we are at 13 million. No, not even 11. I'm sorry, I misspoke. And now we can go over the pension actuarial assumptions. I think over the past few years, with all the funding changes and commingling of the assets and the police board relative to the independent funding that existed back a while ago, the assumptions have been set to be comparable or with the police board assumptions, and generally they're not that much different than what had been used in the past. There's been the modifications in the mortality tables were just industry-wide. They weren't just for the police fund. They were an actuarial industry adjustment to a more current table, the PUBS. And the police board experience study created an adjustment based simply on their study of Illinois police And those are included in the assumptions that we develop for both funding, accounting, and for the police board amounts. And you can see they're adjusted factor 1.15 for healthy male, 1.08 for disabled male. These are not monstrous adjustments, but they're reflecting the experience. And discount rate, as I said, is 6.63 this year under the accounting 6768. Rate of return on investments remains at 6.8, which is the 2025 assumption. The ADC and the funding policy contributions, we went through the entry age normal funding contribution with a level dollar amount, mentioning that it pays at least the interest on the unfunded liability. And the formal adoption of the funding policy is something that's, we have an understanding, but we don't have a written commitment that's part of a dogma that the accounting people would recognize as a formal funding policy. The percentages have increased over the past 2 years, generally from the favorable investment return. And it should continue to do well if we can maintain the investment return of 6.8% or close to that. That would be pretty good. The contributions have increased over the past 5 years. The really brief experience review would say that there's been fewer deaths than expected. And the change in assumptions of mortality and things like that, and the fluctuating investment return have also added to some degree to the contribution increase. The investment return assumption, if we go back to, well, 20 years to 2005, you can see that it's the blue up and down are the actual returns, and of course they're up and down and all over the place. The yellow is the assumed rate of return, which is 6.8%, and the green is the compounded average, and that's all the way back from 2005, and it includes some big dips like in 2008 or 9, and well, 1 or 2 high points in 2021. But overall, you know, if we took a shorter period, you could select different periods which would produce different compound rates, but that's it for the entire 20-year period here. The demographic assumptions are updated every year on the mortality tables to the degree new improvements are provided. Right now, we're using it to reflect the most recent police board experience. And the rates haven't changed, as I said, for a couple of years. And periodically the society produces, they call them mortality improvement scales. When they first started doing it in 2017, they overshot and they produced very high improvement scales. And especially in the private sector plans, they, shot up the contributions quite a lot. And then for the next couple of years, they changed the improvement scale so that they were a little bit lower, and we haven't had a new one since 2021, so we'll see. The forecast valuations, which is the scale or the exhibit we just showed you a little bit ago, shows the future contributions and maintaining contribution goals of, we talked about international equity or intergenerational equity before. The goal is to not clobber one group of taxpayers or population with heavy costs and then not have it be equal to or not equal to, fair to the remaining populations, but to smooth this over populations in an equitable way so that it makes sense and funds the plan and creates the solvency necessary for the police fund. Or you can skip 17 again, which is the projections. And then this last slide is just a summary of the results from the OPEB valuation. And for those that aren't, familiar, the OPEB is an unfunded retiree medical plan. And it just covers the cost of providing benefits, continuation of benefits for participants, for not just the police, but also for the library and municipal. And it's, there aren't any assets, so therefore this is governed by, and this is an accounting requirement, by the muni rates. And so the muni rate this year was, where are we, 5.4%, I think? And the couple of aspects with respect to the results this year is that the premiums, there was a gain based on premiums relative to what was expected. And there were a gain with respect to the actuarial assumptions too, because the discount rate increased, because we're looking at the muni rate this year compared to the muni rate last year. And it's, it went from 4.12 last year to 5.12 this year, which is a pretty dramatic, more than 100 basis point increase in the discount rate, and therefore an increase in the discount rate reduces the liability. So that had a big impact this year on the net OPEB liability.
I think we have answered at least my questions. Does anyone else have questions of Kathy or her team?
Yes, please.
Yes.
There's an assumption in there that is the rate of return is 6.8%.
Oh, on the OPEB?
No, on the previous pages, like page 17 or.
On the police pension fund.
Yeah.
Please.
Yep, and so that rate is, I mean, compared to the people investing for me, this is a pretty aggressive rate. How do you, I mean, I know this is the rate you have to use, but that's not a rate I've seen holding over time.
Well, as you look back, if you go back for the 20 years, you see it was 5.71 or whatever. These rates are established according to the expectations of the pension board with their commingled assets. And I'm sure they'll be adjusted, and they'll be reflecting the, I think there's been it depends on the assets that are permitted for investment relative to how they were before. There were more restrictions. And we're using the 6.8. I don't think that one of the considerations is that if you decrease the rate to something very more conservative, you have a big increase in the contribution amount.
Right.
And that
Contributed to the current population, which, that's a consideration. Is that fair or not? Because if the things go better, you could have allocated a big portion of the cost of liability to a group for a few years, and then after that, other groups are given kind of a relief that maybe that wasn't fair in terms of the generational equity.
Yep, do you have a table that would show that normalized rate of return by contribution, such as 6.8 was 1.4, but if you fall at 6%, what would it be for the next that population as a contribution?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So President Charlo is looking at what, if you had different rates of return incorporated into the valuation, what would that do to the contribution? So I think in the past you've given me the data, but it's been over a year. So I don't know if that's something you could just provide. I think we did something similar if we went from 6.8 to like 5.5%, or with percentages of, quarter percent increases in that range, what would that do to the contribution?
Proportional.
Yeah.
Proportional,
For every
right.
0.5%, that it's.
Yeah.
I mean, I will add, just so you know, that the pension,
I don't know if it is, but I'm assuming it's pretty sizable.
it would be. And the pension board did reduce this rate to mirror the state rate. So this is what the state is using as their investment rate of return for all funds, downstate pension funds. So that was the big change from last year to increase the rate.
No, I'm aware of that. I mean, this
Okay.
is very helping us having more access to more
Right.
ways to invest money. I'm good with that, but we're still the one responsible for our population that is on the other side of the street.
Oh, absolutely. But there are
So-
other ways to get to increasing, the contribution as well. I haven't, yeah,
No,
well,
it would be just for informational purpose. I respect this is a great presentation, by the way, and I really appreciate the amount of data, and I really relate to for me, it makes complete sense. But from a liability, from a risk standpoint, things have gone down the tube faster than we can expect. And so knowing that the 6.8% is an assumed rate, knowing what it would be if we're to fall at 6.5 or 6 or 5.5 would
oh,
be a
no.
great knowledge.
We can certainly know that information. Our staff recommendation in the packet was to follow the actuarial guidance that was provided in the evaluation that went with the higher contribution, which was an alternate contribution. And that funding number was $140,000 and some change greater than the usual contribution calculation in the valuation.
Okay.
So I'm happy to share the page with you, Regis, that shows the.
Thank you. What was the 1.7?
We did have an extensive discussion about this last year, and I think some of the communities, as I recall, were down at 6.5%. That seemed to be the low end of the range.
Absolutely.
7 was pretty common. But we pointed out at the time that we have such a small population that we don't have the law of big numbers working for us when it comes to the mortality rates. We can have pleasant surprises, and some of our retirees can live a very, very long time and throws our numbers off substantially, and we don't have a big population to average that out over time. So we decided to go down, not all the way to 6.5, but to 6.8, being the number that was recommended by the police board. I think you just identified one of the statewide boards.
Yeah.
And to thereby make our numbers somewhat more conservative without going all the way down to the 20-year average, which, as you point out, is 5.61. That would be a very large drop in the discount rate. So I'm glad that we went to 6.8. I want to continue to pursue that. Because our population is so small, we are subject to wide divergence. With just one life, the assumptions we made can be radically wrong. With just one disability, the assumptions we make can be radically wrong. And so I think we owe it to our constituents to continue to be conservative. I'm proud that we went to 6.8. I think we could go all the way to 6.5, but I'm glad to see us at 1.4 this year contribution. And I'm comfortable with recommending that to the full board. Regis, I think that your point is well taken, that we'd all like to get 20-year average of 7%. It just doesn't happen, and it hasn't happened, but we at least are moving in the right direction. And what makes me feel more comfortable with this 6.8 than I might have been when I was pushing for 6.5 last year, what is this chart on page 17, which shows that we are going to be, in order to get to 2040 where we want to be, we are going to be at somewhat less than 1.5 over the course of the next 15 years. So it's not that we're going up and up and up and up, nor are we dropping. We're looking at about 1.4, 1.5 contribution each year, right? As page 17 says. If we were to change our assumption to a 5.6 compound average return or 5.6 discount rate, we'd be contributing much more than that, as I understand it, to make up for that
Right.
change
Oh,
in
yes.
discount rate.
I think the one point you made that is really important is the effect of disabilities, because they're the most volatile. and they have big impacts when they come in. The mortality rates have a way of, easing out over time, but the big increases can happen from, if you have an accident or something else, and you have a couple of, duty disabilities, that has a big impact on the pension plan. And so being more conservative, it can't hurt, and it can only ease the ability to, make the contributions and, solidify the plan over time. And being a little bit more conservative, it also increases your asset performance. So
Right.
to the degree you can do it, it all works out well.
Last year, when we contributed about 200,000 more than we might have, or maybe it was the year prior, we actually earned that 9.6% on $200,000 more than we would have had we not contributed that much last year. So the more we have put in now, the more effect those good years have on the total liability. I am, at some point, and I know we're out of time, but at some point, we need to probably understand what this contribution, why this contribution levels out so much, because we have seen it go up each year by 100 or 200,000 each year, and now we're looking at a leveling.
Well, this is, the difference is this is a closed group. Projection.
Closed group, oh, people, so we don't add anybody.
Right, we're
Okay,
not
well,
changing
not
to
adding
money.
any.
It's based
Oh,
on,
well, all right, so,
yeah.
Probable,
why?
in terms of the quantity of officers, the quantity won't change, the number of people will change, right? The makeup of the census will change.
I have
Yeah.
a PDF.
Presumably
Thank
be
you.
more tier 2,
Yes, well, presuming that's
that
right.
stays, yeah.
Okay, I know we need to get to the grocery tax because that is a significant issue and we need a few minutes
So,
to discuss
yeah,
it.
and Bettina, procedurally, this will go to the police pension board for second week of September, so third week
The
of September.
10th of September, it'll
They'll
go to
make a
the,
recommendation to you guys, it'll come back through, it'll be part of the tax levy conversation, but
right,
it'll look a
with
lot
a
like this.
request for, their,
Yeah.
And,
Okay,
and so I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, the proposal by Bettina is to not do 1.4, but 1.565, right? That would be the
correct.
result.
Right.
Okay.
oh,
yes.
That's the alternative, 100%
That was in the
funding,
cover.
yes.
Thank you.
wow,
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you pointed that out.
Yeah.
It's about $140,000 more than the base calculation, so.
That's that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathleen. Appreciate your
Well,
time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving to our next item of business without enough time really, but I understand that we have a little bit more time. Moving to the order of business regarding the grocery tax. As I understand it, Governor Pritzker repealed the statewide grocery tax and left it up to the municipalities to decide whether or not they wanted to impose their own grocery sales tax. And the Illinois Municipal committees that we're on, I can't remember the name of it, association that we're on, fought very hard for municipalities to be able to replace the statewide tax with their own grocery tax, and that amendment went through. So we now have the right to replace what the state was collecting and remitting to us with our own tax that the state would continue to collect and remit to us, as I understand it.
That's correct.
But I think we really need to have a full board communication or discussion about this because this is the heart and soul of this community. I just was reading online, Pritzker called it an embarrassing tax. When Peoria leaders said to Pritzker, "This is killing us. What are you doing to us?" He said, "I am doing my best to stop in the state of Illinois the most embarrassing of taxes because it's the most regressive of taxes. People can't choose not to eat." So I do want us to look at something different. I am perfectly okay with us keeping the same rate, but I will have a very hard time. Each and every day we report and agree to our financials. Every time we approve a financial, one of the line items will be, from here on out, grocery tax. I'm not going to be happy about voting for the grocery tax and saying, yes, yes, we're happy about that grocery tax. I appreciate that we've been getting the benefit of it for years, but Pritzker moved us, say what you will about Pritzker, I guess, but Pritzker moved us away from this regressive tax, and I don't think we ought to pick up the slack. So I do think we need to talk about alternatives. My soapbox has now been pulled out. I do think we really need to come up with alternatives. I don't care if Lake Forest is doing it, Highland Park is doing it, everybody's doing it. We've got a smart board here, I'm sure they do too, who can understand what a regressive tax is. And this is a grocery tax is the most regressive of taxes.
So really quickly, the alternatives would be in the neighborhood of a property tax increase, which is probably not easily accomplished given the village's pledge to not raise it above PTEL. The other option would be a home rule sales tax increase. We're currently at 1%. And the third thing would be looking at spending cuts.
Well, can you just remind me, without me paging back through my notes, what is the loss?
250.
250.
So, I don't want to sound bougie, but how big of an impact on our budget really is 250? It's a huge number to one person, but is it really such a stunning impact to our budget? I mean, the answer might be yes, but I'm
2.5%.
I think that's a valid point, and I think there are ways that we can address this. We can increase our home rule tax, right, that taxes rugs and lamps, and I don't know if it taxes dinners out, but it taxes other things other than groceries. So we could increase that tax and be a proud member of the North Shore community that says we have a zero grocery tax. So I agree with you. Do we need to replace the 250? I guess the question I have is we have a $320,000 rebate of sales tax on our balance sheet. I noticed, doesn't that sunset at some point?
It does next year.
Maybe
Okay.
one more year.
Done and done.
Well, and to your point is
We've
the
used that as a
village's fiscal
reference for
plans
so
for the
much
long-term capital plan assumes that revenue stream would continue. It accounts for the sales tax coming back online. It makes all those assumptions. Now,
I appreciate that, and I just think this is a full board discussion, and we ought to go in with our eyes wide open. Because I think it's easy to leave status quo. I think that's easy. We can cover our eyes, oh, status quo. But every month, we're going to be approving grocery tax revenue.
I don't know if it would appear that way on the ledger,
Well,
per
it
se. I think it might be blended in with the other sales tax.
Grocery, enabling people to eat
Okay,
tax.
so what you're asking for is a committee of the whole to discuss that in an upcoming meeting. Okay?
I'm asking for two things. I want further information about what other towns are doing with their home rule tax. Because there is room in the home rule tax to tax everything else we tax at a higher rate than 1%, which is what we currently tax it at, right? We could put this money into something that is less regressive.
I don't know, I can tell you real quickly, and I'm happy to provide more detail, but of the 215 home rule communities in the state of Illinois, 91 of them impose a home rule tax greater than 1%.
Of the 200, how many?
215.
So 215 communities and
Somewhere
90.
between 1% and 2%.
Right, somewhere between 1% and 2%. And of that, I don't have the exact number, but I will say very few of them are in Lake County.
Yeah,
Yes.
most of North Shore communities are at 1%.
Yeah,
Most
because
of
they're
North
taxing
Shore is
groceries.
1%.
So, okay.
So we can give more details. We can show what like a
I want to embarrass everybody around
0.25%.
us because really, they think they're just as liberal as we are, but I'm telling you, this is the most regressive tax there is. Grocery tax.
We'll give you some more details on
Sure.
alternatives.
That's fine.
And that would be scheduled in a,
Cow workshop.
okay, all
And
right.
we do need to do this before October 1st, as I understand it, right?
Only if you want it to be
Right.
without a gap.
Seamless.
So, yeah, so the only thing would be there would be no seamless. If we don't have it filed by the 29th of October,
Lose a month,
there'd be a
whatever you
gap.
29th
So
of October?
What?
September.
29th of September.
Oh, 29th of September, sorry.
Yeah.
there'd be a gap in, the revenue.
I just want a full and open discussion on this. I think it's kind of core to who we are. I really do.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, so with that speech,
Comment, and then.
public comment. Does anyone have a comment to offer with regard to this or any of the other items before we close the Finance Committee and move to the Village Board meeting? Okay. Hearing nothing, can I have a motion to conclude the,
Motion to conclude.
and so, second? Adjourn. That's the word. Adjourn.
Yes.
That's the word I wanted.
I just follow Susan's lead. I'm
Get
like,
it.
whatever she says, I'll
I
say.
get it.
Motion to adjourn the Finance Committee meetings.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Recording stopped.
Okay.